Hello everyone and welcome, this is Common and Cam. Today we're going to be talking about Blitzwing in the Transformers Bumblebee movie, on how he exactly managed to find Bumblebee on Earth. Now one thing you got to keep in mind is that yes, there is a prequel comic for this movie, but the movie is essentially separated into two films. So basically the original cut of the Bumblebee movie, the test screening, was a lot stronger connected to the past 5 Transformers films. Now with the final cut that we all watched in cinemas, changes that an awful lot, getting rid of the hard connections and ignoring the entire continuity of a prequel comic to Bumblebee. Hence why this film is labelled as a pre-boot, both prequel and also a reboot. But it leans more to the side of a reboot than a prequel, considering the contradictions in the story. And the prequel comic is kind of a bit more faithful to Blitzwing's character being a triple changer, while the movie just keeps him as a seeker. That's why there's 2 stories on Blitzwing on how he could have possibly found Bumblebee. Now the movie doesn't make it clear, nor does the prequel comic. All the prequel comic tells us is how Blitzwing was around in 1964. This of course keeps the connection that Bumblebee was around in World War II and he stayed around on Earth since then, and it led up to the events of the original cut of the Transformers Bumblebee movie. Because how the film originally started out is that Bumblebee and Blitzwing were already fighting each other and Sector 7 was chasing them. There was no Cybertron scene included at all. But the final cut of the movie that we see in cinemas retcons all of this and includes the Transformers Cybertron scene, which sets up how Bumblebee arrived to Earth in the movie. But stuff was still changed through the movie because Blitzwing was originally on Cybertron, but that colour was altered to make that character actually Starscream instead, and we know that because it was in the end credits of the movie. So that is Starscream, not Blitzwing. So with Blitzwing essentially not being even on Cybertron, it's like, okay, so who is his character? Where does he come from if a prequel comic is no longer canon? Well, talking about the movie version first, he says a few lines of dialogue which kind of give us a few hints of what he's at and what he's been doing. Now you've got to bear in mind that Blitzwing isn't really in contact with Dropkick or Shadow, because Dropkick and Shadow only find Cliffjumper when the movie starts getting going when Charlie activates Bumblebee's signal, and that took place on one of Saturn's moons. It's like almost the Decepticons are out by themselves looking for those Autobots. And while it may appear that Blitzwing found a few of those Autobots, with his dialogue,
"Now you'll die screaming like your friend,"
implying that he's already found a few Autobots close to Bumblebee. Whether or not those are the Autobots that we see on the Cybertron scene, Brawn, Ratchet, Ironhide, I find it very unlikely. He could be talking about any random Autobot for all we know. But his first bit of dialogue, "Did you think you could hide?" tells us that he has been searching for him for a very long time, and has a personal grudge against Bumblebee. Now this is where the connections to the prequel comics start to be aligned a little bit. But it still doesn't make sense considering the timelines are very different from the movie to the comic, because the Bumblebee prequel comic is more faithful to the original cut of Bumblebee than the final cut. Taken from the TF Wikia, Blitzwing has had a previous relationship with Bumblebee, because the last time Bumblebee saw Blitzwing, he was humiliated, being left for dead and swearing revenge on the Scout. This took place during the Great War. Several thousand years later, Blitzwing made his way to Earth during the Cold War and fell under the command of Malignus. And in 1964, Blitzwing reunited with Bumblebee in London to exact his revenge. And in the prequel comic, it really does show Blitzwing in his triple changer mode, from tank to jet. Blitzwing didn't manage to get his revenge though in 1964, because he was defeated yet again, but he was able to survive a collapsed building towards the conclusion of the prequel comic, and flew into the night, and he was hunted by Bumblebee for the next 2 decades. Now this nice backstory would be great if only it made sense with the final cut of the movie. It would make sense to the original cut because we didn't get to see the Cybertron scene in the original cut, because the movie actually started out with Blitzwing and Bumblebee, with Sector 7 chasing Bumblebee. So really the final cut doesn't give any explanation to how Blitzwing exactly found Bumblebee in this new timeline. I guess the best kind of explanation you can really think of is, as Blitzwing was searching across the universe, he managed to see Bumblebee in his pod, and just as Bumblebee crash lands, detected his signal and started to chase after him, and just when Bumblebee was surrounded by Sector 7, Blitzwing decided to make his move. It was unfortunate that the film didn't decide to take a turn where it would see Blitzwing, Dropkick and Shadow working together. Sadly not, and this character was utterly wasted. Really is wasted potential considering the amount of rich history and lore he has in the Transformers universe. Though I doubt we will ever see the design or the character ever again in a Transformers live action movie. I like to think of this as Ramjet instead. Of course, it's Blitzwing as it is in the credits, and that's fine, that's all well and good. We've got to take a character by what his actual name is, but I just like to think that, yeah, this was Ramjet, and I kind of would prefer that than it being Blitzwing. Anyway guys, that's my conclusion on how Blitzwing managed to find Bumblebee in the Transformers movie. It's unfortunate that the prequel comic has no connection to the Bumblebee movie at all. It originally did with its original cut, but of course with lots of things changing by Paramount and Hasbro, I feel like it kinda was for the better. Because we can enter a new wave now of Transformers movies in the future with this final cut. If it went with the original cut, we wouldn't have had the amazing Cybertron scene. More that we hope to get in the future. Anyway guys, share me what you think in the comment section below. If you're not already, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and click on that notification bell to get all updates, especially on the Transformers live action movies, instantly. Until the next video guys, this has been Common and Cam, and goodbye.